The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good morning. This is Jeff with DTools Software. We'll get started here in just a moment. For anybody that's new to GoToWebinar, just a few quick housekeeping things. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a GoToWebinar window. If it's in your way, you can click the little red arrow button that will collapse the window off to the right. Since we do have a lot of people joining in the webinar today, we will keep the microphones muted for a majority of the call today. There is a questions area over on the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to post questions there as they come up, and I will be monitoring those as we go through the webinar. But at the end, we will certainly plan on doing a Q&A session as well. Perfect. So what we'll do is, since we're right on time, let's go ahead and jump into the webinar and get started. So today's webinar is focused specifically for higher ed institutions. So we'll talk a bit about some of the challenges that schools face, specifically internal teams managing low voltage systems, AV, security, IT, or networking, or will be the main focuses of the conversation. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So we're going to start by giving you a high-level introduction and talk about some of the challenges that schools face. And when we talk about some of those challenges or issues, we'll also discuss some of the things that we've seen other schools and universities do to solve some of those problems. And then after that, if you'd like to sit through, we'll do a brief demonstration of the DTools platform, show you how we've helped other colleges and universities with managing their projects. And at the end, as I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session. And if there's any additional things that you want to do as next steps, maybe schedule an additional follow-up meeting or conversation, we would be happy to do that with you. All right, perfect. So a little bit of background on us as a company. For me, anyone that's not familiar with DTools, we've been doing this now. It's actually our 25th year in business. We started off working with low voltage contractors or integrators, predominantly in the AV space. So we've got well over 7,000 integration companies worldwide using our platform. Some of you that use integrators may have heard of the tool or may not even be aware that some of the integrators that you work with are using our platform. But we have had the opportunity to work with over 150 higher ed institutions over the years. There's actually a lot of things that we built for integrators that actually work really well for internal AV and low voltage teams at schools, which we'll talk about today. And we do also partner with a lot of the industry organizations. So especially on the AV, security, fire, and even structured cabling side of things. So when we get to the drawing side of things, we'll talk a bit about some industry standards and things that we do there with that. So as far as how we help schools, I would say these tend to be the four most common issues or challenges people come to us looking for help with. And this isn't the only four by any means. I would just say these are the four most common that we see. And like I said, for a lot of schools, there's, it depends on the scenario. Sometimes you're usually designing and even budgeting systems, but you may not always be managing the installation or even service side of things. So we'll talk about what we can do there with that. So as far as what the platform does and what we help schools with is really these 5 areas. And like I said, depending on your school, this is going to vary a bit. I think most schools are doing estimation and needing to put together some level of proposals or budgets for projects that you may have going on campus. So we'll talk a bit about what we do there. We're seeing a lot more and more institutions also doing their drawings in-house. Some of you may be using, it could be something as simple as like a PDF markup tool, Visio, AutoCAD, SketchUp. So we do have some tools that we do integrate, which we'll talk about, and we'll show you how we save quite a bit amount of time and also link all your equipment and assets to those drawings as a part of the discussion today. Now, project planning and installation, whether you're doing the install in-house or not, we do have the ability to oversee and kind of plan out and create Gantt charts and schedules for the system. And we'll talk about some of the different ways that schools have used this platform to help with that. We also do service. So this is probably the area that is going to be hit or miss for some of you. Some of you may do internal service, may have another department that does that. So we'll talk about what we do there. And then also kind of the back office side of things, which is really ordering of equipment, receiving of equipment, just giving you overall analytics into what's going on. We can certainly do that as well, which we'll touch on. Now, one of the advantages of the dTools platform is our product library. This is something we spent quite a bit of time on. We partner with over 200 manufacturers, so we've got manufacturer partnership in the system, and not just manufacturers, but also some distributors as well. So we've got an extensive product library. There's well over 1 million active parts in there. And for some of you, or probably most of you, you're probably either have a database that you're managing or maintaining yourself, or if you're just going out online to the vendor websites and looking up stuff as you need to. So this takes a lot of that research and that searching out of the process for you by having a centralized database in a library that's actually built and managed by the vendors, as well as we have our own internal data team that's constantly working on this stuff. Now, we're usually adding or updating, I'd say, between 15 to 30,000 products on a weekly basis, which just kind of give you the idea of the scope of what's going on here. There's literally thousands of parts being added or updated in the library every single day as a part of our platform. Now, some other things, too, that you may find interesting, we do track the typical stuff you'd expect, manufacturer, model, category, descriptions, images. We also track the technical specs. So we track dimensions. So if you want to build a rack drawing or do an elevation layout, make sure everything's going to fit properly in the space, we can help you with that. We also track inputs and outputs too. So you can do wiring diagrams, which we'll see here today. And we also can do even things like POE calculations as well. So we can help you with designing a system, making sure it's going to work properly and fit within the budgets there. And we also do provide industry standard labor times. And I know depending on, the school, sometimes you do the installations in-house. Sometimes you may subcontract that out to an integrator, or it may just depend on the size or scope of the project. But these are all things that we can certainly help with, at least give you an idea of what the typical install time is for those items. So we'll go ahead and slide over to the next one and talk a bit about the estimation and proposal side of things. Now, when it comes to estimating, I'll show you a few examples today so you get an idea of what some of the out-of-the-box templates look like inside the platform. Now, the other thing about this is you can really customize it to make it look any way you want. So if you have a certain look or layout or format that you need to conform to, good news, we can usually help you with that. We got the tools in the system to customize the reports. Now, when it comes to labor, I mentioned earlier that we do track labor times in our library. We do have the labor times per part. So as you add equipment to a project you're working on, it's not only going to add the equipment charges, but also can factor in the labor that may be needed. So we'll talk a bit about how we do labor in a bit, but that's also can be factored into this. We can also remind you of add-on items. So a lot of times, you may remember the big items, but sometimes things like mounts, cables, power supplies can sometimes slip through the cracks when you're designing and trying to put together a budget for a system that you're working on. So we do have a feature called accessories, which can remind you or prompt you for other things. So as an example, you add a TV or display to a project, it could say, here's your typical mount options, here's your typical cable options. So you're not having to go look for those items, and you don't have to worry about potentially forgetting those items as well. So it's a nice little reminder here to have in the platform. Now we also can present upgrade and downgrade options too. So a lot of times, people I talk with, hey, we're kind of bouncing between different ideas, and using the display example. I mean, it could be, let's say you're working in a science lab or something, and you're going between a 75 and an 85-inch display on the wall, and they want to know what the price difference is going to be for that. You can show those price differences all on that quote. So you don't have to build 2 or 3 different versions of the same job just to show those differences. We can do that all within the platform. Now, we do have an online portal, which is really designed for sharing documentation with people that need it. So that could be for the end users or department heads you're working with for budgets. You can share proposals online. They can review it. They can e-sign it to confirm and approve that budget if needed. But that portal can also be used for sharing drawings, any documents, including change orders as well, and also sharing documentation with integrators or other trades that you may be working with as well. So we do have an online collaboration tool that you can use for that. Now, drawings is another big part of what we do, and this is probably one of the big things that we initially schools come to us looking for help with. Is you may be doing drawings now, but it's very tedious and it's manual. And the other big part of, big issue with drawings too, especially with school projects, is, it's not linked to anything. So yeah, we've got a drawing, but, we don't always keep it up to date. We don't have any asset information behind those drawings. And so what we do here at D-Tools is we make those drawings smart. So everything that you see on a drawing page is actually linked to product data and linked to a database inside the system. And that also makes the drawing process much, much faster. So we found that with a lot of schools that are using our platform, they can increase their design and engineering time by 50%. And that's actually, I would say, a very conservative estimate, that it can actually be even faster than that. We have all the shapes and symbols in there to do things like floor plan layouts. We can do rack elevations. We can also do wiring diagrams since we're tracking the IOs. And so it really speeds up that whole process. But not only is it speeding up and saving time, but it's also creating a bill of materials or equipment list for you as well. So we kind of have really two workflows when it comes to drawings. You can start with a equipment list. You kind of build out where you want equipment to go and I'll organize it by room. And then later you can drag and drop from that list right into a drawing. But you do have the capability of starting with the drawing first. So you can actually bring a floor plan in, start dragging and dropping equipment on top of it. And as you're doing that, that's creating your equipment list, adding up the equipment, the labor estimates, and giving you a budget based off what you design and lay out. So it's all fully tied together. There's never an issue of, oh, my equipment list doesn't, match my drawings, which one's right. That's all eliminated with this being all tied together here in one platform. And this also, the other benefit of this as well is when it comes to change orders and revisions, we've got a really good dialed in process for managing that. So anytime you make a change, if I go and swap a projector out with a different projector on a drawing, it updates all the related drawings where that item exists. It updates my equipment list, my budget, all my other reports for the installation. It's all tied together. So literally you change it once and you're done. So a lot of times, schools, if you think about it, a lot of times on average, people are actually, one change on in a project usually means having to change it in at least 2 or 3, maybe even 4 or 5 different places every single time. So it's a lot of work. And it's also, not only a time waster, but it's a room for error as well. So that's one thing that the system can really help out with. Now, from a drawing platform standpoint, we do work with both Visio and AutoCAD. So you can plug into either of those platforms as your preference. And like I said, we have a full library of shapes and blocks all linked to the products already. So you just download what vendors you work with, and you can drag and drop. And we'll show you an example of some of this here in just a moment. Now, when it comes to projects, once the project that you're working on does get approved, we can basically lock it down, start tracking changes. Our system automatically tracks change orders once the project's been approved. And we're going to ask you, when you make a change, is this an internal change or is this a client or end user requested change? So that way we can keep tabs on who needs to approve it and also who may be paying for any price differences on that project. Now, we also can help with the scheduling side of things. So since our system has a lot of data behind it, just by building a project or designing a system in the platform, we can actually create a Gantt chart with just a few clicks. We know what all the equipment's estimated labor time should be. We also know what installation phase those items are typically installed on. So based on that, we can create a project plan for you very quickly, and you can then start dispatching or creating tasks for your team internally, or you can also create tasks for integrators or other vendors to access. Now, we do have a tool called Mobile Install, which we've worked with schools that do it, several different ways. You may use that just for your internal team, when you're going out to do an install. You may want to track the time that it took. You can also track what's been installed. You can take photos. You can even put in things like serial numbers, IP addresses, and MAC addresses on the devices from the mobile side. And all of that ties back into your as-builts. So you have an accurate list of what's been done and all the documentation behind it. Now, this also can be shared with integrators or contractors that you're maybe subcontracting stuff out to. This gives them a very clear, concise list of what needs to be done. You can track their progress, get their notes, photos. They can add the asset information as well from out in the field. And all that stuff that they're doing, it all syncs back up to your project and gives you that visibility in one spot. So it does give you kind of a way to really keep everything on the same page. You're not having to bounce between emails and spreadsheets and Word documents and all these different things that you may be using to keep track of what's going on. This all ties it together in one spot. And like I said, this is a really good project management tool. And like I said, we'll show you what some of the tools look like that we have in here for this side of the process. Now, service, we probably won't spend a whole lot of time on this today, but I did want to mention it that we do have the ability to set up and track service requests inside the platform. A lot of schools, have a service platform already, and it is something that we may be able to integrate with through our API if that's the case. But for anybody that doesn't have a really good tool for managing that, we do have the ability to track and manage service requests here inside the platform. So that's all an option that you have. Then next, last but not least, is really kind of the operations side of things on the back end. When it comes to ordering equipment, we can summarize very quickly what needs to be ordered and through what vendor. So that way you can either issue your POs here directly through the platform, or you can at least get a list together here inside the system that you can pull together to send to somebody for ordering. We do have a lot of integrations. I mentioned our API. We've got over 25 integrations or platforms that we've worked with so far. And we do give you some dashboards and insights into what's happening projects-wise. So if you are getting, questioned by the administration team, what's going on, where are we at with this, what's the pipeline looking like, all that stuff. We've got some nice looking dashboards and graphs that break everything down for you. And it also gives you a way to stay on top of things, especially you get in the busy season during the summer. You can have these dashboards up on the home screen and get a daily, recap of what's going on, where we're at, what percentage are we done with this job or that job. All of that can be tracked and managed here within the platform. So last thing is, return on investment's big. With any software system, you want to make sure it's going to pay for itself and then some. And so we've, like I said, worked with a lot of schools and universities, a lot of them for well over a decade. And, for a lot of schools, they find that, the time savings alone pays for itself, but there's the error reduction, the improved documentation, just being able to service systems a lot better by having everything documented here in the platform. Like I said, put a few logos up here of just some other schools that are using the platform. There's actually a lot more than just this. But anybody that's on the webinar today, if you would like to get connected with any of the schools that are using our platform now, we're more than happy to get you connected with some of them so you can see how they're using it and ask them some questions about their experience. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and jump over to the software here a bit. And we talked about some issues or challenges today, and I want to show you how the DTools platform can help with that. And so what we're going to do is move over here to the DTools system. So this is the home page. This is what you see when you open up the software. Now, first thing I'm going to touch on is just talk a little bit about our library. Let's go up here to the catalog and go to our library. So this is our database. We've got, as I mentioned earlier, well over 1 million active parts, constant updates happening here inside the system. And like I said, thousands of manufacturers listed here on the left-hand side. Now, one thing that we've added in the last few years is the ability to also get direct price feeds through the system. So for some of you, you may have direct partnerships with vendors or manufacturers where you have an account with them. And that's great. If you do, we do have the ability for you to get connected with their pricing system through our platform. And every night, our system can look for updates, pull down price changes, and update that in here. show you what that looks like real quick. So this is a list of all the vendors that participate in the price feeds. And so if I'm using, if I'm got an Equestrian account as an example, I would click that, hit connect, put in the account number, billing zip code, and then once that vendor, in this case Crestron, confirms that you are a dealer or have an account with them, they will approve you, and it'll be matched to your price level with them. So you'll get your educational pricing and price updates all through the system. Now, some of you may be buying through an integrator or a distributor, and that's fine too. If the distributor is not participating in our price feeds, or if it's through an integrator, we do have the ability to import price list into the system. If you get a price sheet from someone on a regular basis, if you can get that in an Excel sheet or Excel format, we can import that. You can import that right into the system and manage those updates inside the software pretty easily. And we'll talk a bit about pricing once we get into a project. There's also easy ways to put things out for bid and get pricing and import that back into the system too, so you have those numbers all in one spot. So that's a little bit on the library. So like I said, tons of stuff out there. If there happens to be a product that you need that's not in the library for whatever reason, you can always create your own items. So you can always copy something that's similar to it. And we do also have a data request option too, where you can request a product or product line, and our data team can go out and get that added for you if it's not there. So those items that you download from our library, those get put into what's called your catalog. So your catalog is going to consist of products. It's also going to consist of labor and also packages. So products are going to be the individual pieces of equipment or items there that you'll be able to work with. Now, packages are kind of just how they sound. Packages are pre-built systems or assemblies, which is a huge benefit on the education side of things, because a lot of times you are working with similar systems quite a bit. So you can actually set up a room system or package and have that already set up and ready to go. So you're not having to constantly recreate the wheel over and over again. So let's take you through what building a project looks like here in the software, and we'll take you through how you build a little drawing. We'll create a little equipment list here and maybe show a few project management things so you can see how that works here in the software. So first thing we'll do is go up here to start a new one. So this opens up a window where we can start putting in details here for the project. So when we have client name here, this sometimes for a lot of schools, this would be like the department or the contact for the school that needs to be directed to. So you can go in and choose that. I'm just going to let's go grab somebody that's in there already. Let's do that. Okay, so then we go into our project name. So we'll call this EDU webinar, April 2023. Now you've got some other things that you can set up and adjust here. The things like the status, this is actually something that you can customize yourself. So if you want to keep it very simple and just have like 4 or 5 stages that your projects go through, set them up, store them here. There's also notifications too that can be used. So as the project progresses from one stage to the next, we can notify other people on the team automatically. So there's a lot of little nice workflow rules that you can set up in there to automate it. Now there's some different role assignments. Like for a school or university, it's probably not as critical. I mean, yeah, project manager or designer may be something that you want to keep track of, but this stuff here, you can ignore it if you don't need it, if that's too much information. We also have, start dates and estimated end dates for projects, as well as budgetary numbers that we can track here as well. Now, other trades, oftentimes you may be working with a general contractor, an electrician, even an architect, or, all that stuff can be added in here if you want. So it just gives you a place to know who those contacts are for those specific projects if needed. And of course, you got your site and billing address information here. I don't know why I didn't put that in there, but we'll go ahead and paste that in. Then you've got a tax setting, which obviously you guys don't have to worry about. So we'll just set this as tax exempt, and you can have that as your default, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, scope of work, if you want to have a written scope of work for your project, this is where that goes in. And what we've developed to try to make this part of the process here a little faster is go to insert snippet here. And you can go through this list and actually choose some default systems that you may have done before. And as you go through this list and add it in there, it starts to build up some text here for you. You can always edit this if you want to. You can, remove things, add things, and you can actually save new templates of these as you go. This gets everybody on the same page on the team, so we all know, we all have the same access to templates here if we need to. Now, locations is also a pretty big one, especially with schools, because you've got a lot of locations you're dealing with, a lot of different rooms. And so with the way that the locations is set up, you can actually go in and create as many levels of locations as you want to. So I could go in, and if I want to manually type in a location, I can call this the North Campus as an example. Plug that in there. If you've got multiple campuses, that's good for that. Now you can also go in and add buildings if you want to. We can go in and add a location to that campus, and I can run through the list here and add a building if I have one. So we'll just call this maybe the science building here. Now, if I want to go deeper than that, I can, go in and put floors in. I could also just jump right into the rooms if I want to. So we can go ahead and let's just toss a few locations in there that might be in a science building. Do that. Okay. Now, once we've gone through this list, we'll go ahead and toss a few more in there. It starts to create a location list for us. Now, if you've got a lot of rooms that you're setting up, we do also have an auto room numbering system you can do. You can enter a starting number, say how many rooms you need, and it'll create all the rooms and auto number them for you. So you don't have to sit there and manually put those in every single time. Now, when you get into the room and space, you may also want to break it down into even further detail. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but we can go into a room or space and specify a table or a rack if you want to. If I go into maybe the equipment room here, I'll go in, maybe add just another layer of detail. So we'll do rack 1 and 2. Now, I'm getting pretty detailed on this, but I just wanted to show you that you can go to that level of detail if you want to. Now, you may not care about some of that. You can just put in room names, and that's completely fine. But we found that these locations and having them in a hierarchy really helps, not only for the project and the installation side, but also for just managing and servicing these systems later on. You know where everything's at. You can dial it in. You can do searches. Hey, find this equipment that's has the serial number, or is this 3 years old, and start pulling this up and seeing where it's at. So it's all here in one spot. So we'll slide over here really to the last step that's important, which is your custom fields. We give you a whole bunch of custom fields throughout the platform, and that's really just to kind of customize and modify this to your needs. So I put a few examples of what people use this for, like building code, Wi-Fi passwords. So that information, whatever you want to set up these fields as, you can store information on projects. You can also make this visible on reports, and even share this with integrators or contractors outside the school. So let's go ahead and hit save on that, and let's jump right into it, and let's show you how this works from a building standpoint. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's really two ways to build up a quote or project here. One is we can start with the list and then make a drawing from it, or we can start with a drawing and create a list from that. So it doesn't matter how you start; it's all tied together in the end. So I'm going to show you a little bit of we'll show you a little bit of both, how it works either way. So we'll come up here to add products. So we've got the catalog. This is all of your parts or products that you work with in here. You've got the locations here that we set up just a moment ago. And so finding an item is pretty easy. Just go up here to the search. And if you know what the model number is, or just part of the model number, you can just type it in. Shows you your matches here. And you can select it and say, okay, I want to put that item in the rack 1 in the equipment room. And so we'll hit add here. Now, because we've added that item, we've also got some add-on accessories too that we're getting prompted for. So it's asking me if I want to include some programming, and do I also want to include a vent panel with that. And if there's something I don't need in that list, I can always uncheck it or check it if it's not checked. But we'll go ahead and add that in there. Okay, so that in the background has added our items here to the project. And we can see our numbers here adding up as we go. So what we're going to do now is go find our next item here. So let's go ahead and search for a part. Now, if you know the part number or the model number, as I mentioned, you can type it in, but if you don't, the good news is you can also do a quick search. I could just type in the word speaker. I could type in the word ceiling. I could type in a brand name if I want to. And this is going to narrow down the results here for me. So I go select the one that I want, and I can actually go through and just check off all the areas that it needs to go into. So if I want to put some here, and kind of run through my list, I can go through and check off all the different areas here. And if I want to put more than one in each location, I can also come over here and just change this quantity to 2 if I want to. So let's go ahead and add those in there. And since we're adding in some speakers, we've got some other add-on items to consider. We've got a back box for the ceiling. We also have a 16.2 cable that's also going to get dropped in there with this. Now, when we're dropping in cable, especially cable that we're cutting to length, we have the ability to adjust our estimated run length on that. So if I want to change it from 100 feet to 150, I could do that. You can also come over here and assign a head into the cable. This isn't a requirement, but the nice thing about this is if you do set this information, it will create a wire schedule or wire pull sheet for you, tracking where everything needs to go from and where it needs to go to. So that's now dropped in our information here into the project. All right, so we've got that all set up here. Now, if any of the information that I showed you earlier, you can always go back to the information tab here if you want to go back and make adjustments to it. This will bring up that screen here. And I noticed I've got this set to a price type for that one. So let me change that to the one I typically do. All right, so we've got that. And so now we're ready to roll. All right, so we've got our pricing starting to add up here as we go. And what I'm going to do, since I said this is a government project, I guess because I may have selected Atlanta University as a government project, let me just update that real quick on here to a different, I'll have pricing, it looks like, on some of those items. So I'm just going to do a quick fix here. So let's go change that price type. And we're going to change that to standard. Okay. So that'll fix our pricing. All right, that looks a little more accurate to what's in here so far. Now, as we're doing that, so we can see our price is updated. We've got our labor time is updating too, and this is all just based off what we put here into the project. Now, this grid here is customizable. You can actually move fields around here if you want to. You can actually go up here to layouts and create your own layout to see it the way you want to. And you can play with the numbers here. So that, as a school, this is probably, the part that's a little different, obviously, from working as an integrator. You may not be so concerned with margin or markup. Your cost and your sell price oftentimes is the same. We have seen some schools, though, that do build a little bit of margin in there to kind of cover their department and overhead, but that can be adjusted here as you need to. So real easy to change a price. You can just update it here on the fly if you need to. And you can also apply quick discounts too. So maybe if you're getting a better deal for this particular project because of the volume, you can take a quick 5 or 10% off your regular price in here as well if you want to. Now, as we're doing all this, everything is being organized into rooms, so we can see all the different locations and the subtotals. And if you've got a package or pre-built system or assembly, this goes even faster. So as a reminder, packages are basically pre-built setups. You can have different classroom setups already configured, which has all those items already in there. So you're not having to go through and build everything from scratch. You build it once, save it, and you're done. So that's how we get the equipment list put together. I'm going to next show you how we take it from this and actually start putting some items on a drawing here, so you can see how that works. And then we'll take a look at some reports and things too that get generated. Now, one thing that's happening too as we're doing all this, it's actually creating all of your wire numbers for you and all your wire labels in the background. So all that's being set up here as you go. Now, before I jump into a drawing, just to kind of give you a quick overview of what's going on this screen, this is showing me all of my active projects here that I'm working on. So when you select a project, you'll see any files related to it. So as we start building drawings, running reports and documents, all of that's going to start populating here in this view. And you can actually organize these into folders. So this does give you a place to really keep track of everything in one spot for your jobs. Now you'll see some other tabs here, which we'll get into some of those today, revisions and change orders, tasks, and so on. So we'll come back to some of those in a moment. So let's go here and do a drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this project and I'm going to go start it. And you can do it in Visio or AutoCAD. I'm going to start with Visio first. Choose my preferred template, and this will launch up. So this will launch up natively in Visio or natively in AutoCAD. So if you are a current Visio or AutoCAD user, good news is this is plugging into the system that you already have, so you can start working with it. Oops, give me one moment. My drawing's opening up on my other screen, so I'll bring it over to this screen here just so you can see it in just a moment. Okay, so what happens when we start a new drawing is it creates an equipment list or bill of materials window here for us. So this is the exact same window that we were just in a moment ago. The other screen that we will get is our drawing window. So this is where we can see our drawing pages, and over on the left hand side you're going to see the details menu pop up here within Visio, and you've got different tabs down here at the bottom, and these represent the different types of drawings that you can produce here in the software. So if I wanted to start with a floor plan first, I would go to my plan view. If I wanted to start with a wiring diagram, I'd go to my schematic view first. So you've got a few different ways of starting the project. So how I would work with this, if I've already got an equipment list started like we've done on this project, I would just come over here to my project editor button. And what I'm going to do is slide this over to the left. I'm going to slide my drawing over to the right. And this does have multiple windows, so you can dock it on multiple monitors, which is really the best way to do this if you've got a lot of drawings that you're working on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just take some items that we put in our equipment list and now put this into a drawing to show you how this works. So I'm going to come over here to the left and I'm going to select some items. So I'm going to grab a speaker, I'm going to grab a cable, and I'm going to grab that Crestron amp we put in, and I'm just going to drag and drop that onto my drawing page. Okay. So what this will do on this page is it will bring out the images of the items. So this is all designed to be a real simple, high-level drawing of the system that we're building. Now, as I put items from my list onto my drawing page, you'll notice that these little blue circles or dots showed up in my list. That's actually just letting me know, hey, those items are on the drawing page that you're on. Now, what's really good about this is not only is it a quick visual reference, it also is going to prevent you from making a mistake. So I can't drag that amp on there again. It won't let me do it because I've already got that represented on this drawing. So you can't trip yourself up and accidentally, put 10 speakers on a drawing and then only budget for 8 or 9. The system won't let you do that. If you've got it on a drawing, it's got to be accounted for in the project one way or another. So you can do real simple one-line drawings. This is, like I said, really the most basic of the diagrams that we do. Kind of going to the flip side of that, if I want to go into a schematic view of those items, let me go grab those same 3 items here. And what I'll do, I'll go into full screen here just so you can see what's going on here a little bit better. So we drag this out, and we can now take this and we can now connect these devices up and put these where we want them to go. So all this stuff here, it's all, a lot of the functionality is Visio, but it is linked to data. So when I do this, I connect it up, the wire follows the device where I want to put it. You'll notice, obviously, the inputs and outputs are already there, and that's all just coming from our library, so you don't have to manually build that. The wire numbers are also automated, and you can choose how those wire numbers are going to be created or formatted in here, as well as the color coding. If you've got color coding standards that you're either doing now or want to start, That's another thing you can do is, say, hey, I want audio to always be this color and video to be this color. That can be set up in here. What I do like about the our schematic blocks or shapes here is the ability to make quick adjustments. So if I don't want to show all this information, I can quickly, just right click and remove, certain level of detail and just show the labels if I want to keep it more simple. I can also remove any IOs that I'm not using. So once I've made my connections, if this is taking up a lot of space, I can just right click and remove any IOs that I'm not using. And of course, you can always reverse any of that stuff that we're doing here, but this does keep it nice and easy to make adjustments. If I want to add maybe the room name down below, we can also turn that feature on as well. And this will show us the information down here. And so this is showing me the full detail of how I've got it set up. I can see the campus, building, room, and even the rack it's in. So this is the type of drawing, like I said, that normally would take quite a bit of time. And honestly, a lot of schools either aren't doing it or aren't doing it completely because it does take so much time. But since we have all the data and all the information in here, really not much of an excuse. You can get in here and knock this out pretty quickly. And just think about all the time this would save when you're going out to upgrade a system or service a system. You're trying to figure out what did we do here or who did this. It's all here for either your team or the next team that comes along, 5-10 years down the road. So you've got it all here in one spot. Now these products here too, by the way, if you double click on them, this takes you to that actual part in this project. So once again, it has a unique ID on it. And you'll see that there's also properties on there too. You've got serial number, IP address, MAC address. Those, that information can either be scanned in or entered in throughout the process. And that way it's all, once again, stored with the database for that project. And as mentioned earlier, there's all this other stuff too that we're tracking, descriptions, you've got your pricing tab, you've got your specifications, even power and heat ratings. That's used to generate a rack load report if you need that for the project. That's in there. And of course, all the IOs we talked about too. That's all built into the database in the library. So that's how you do a quick little schematic drawing. Just drag and drop items out, put it in there. I'm going to hop over to my elevation view. So let's say if you want to build a rack, I'll show you how that's done. Now, we didn't actually put a rack into our project yet. So let me show you how easy it is to add something to the drawing and to the equipment list all at the same time. It's just like when we started building up this estimate earlier, you just go in and you say, okay, I want to throw a rack in the rack 1 and 2 spot. I'm going to come over here to my database. I'm going to do a quick search. And then once I find what I'm looking for, I'm just going to drag and drop it right from the search window right into my drawing page. I'll go ahead and add some accessories there with it. And so this now added my 2 racks to the drawing. If I go back over here to my parts list, I can now see that in rack 1 and 2 in this project, I now have 2 racks in there. And our price has gone up. The equipment and labor has now been increased because of that. And so now I just grab what I want to show on this drawing. And there we go. So we can now take this, we can snap this, put this into a rack unit. This is the scale. That's the reason we do track the height, width, and depth on the products in our library, is to make sure this all fits properly when you go to design it. So no surprises later when you go to do the install. And what's really easy about this too, if you need to make a change, if you start building this rack and you run out of room, you can just right click on the rack, swap it to a different one. And the nice thing is you'll get your new rack on the drawing. It updates your equipment list or bill of materials. You're not having to, chase this change in a bunch of different places every single time. And then lastly is your plan view. It's where you can work with floor plans. We do support the ability to import AutoCAD files, but we also have created our own PDF conversion tool for Visio. If anybody's used Visio and tried to insert a PDF floor plan in, you know that it kind of works. It's the image usually doesn't look very good when you zoom in on it, and it's obviously not to scale. So we've created our own PDF conversion tool, which will vectorize the floor plan, and it will allow you to set scaling to it. Let me just go drop a floor plan in real quick here. Now, the way that this works with floor plans, if you bring it in and it is to scale, let me just do this real quick. We can actually do wire distance measurements, which is nice. So you can actually drag a wire pass out across that plan, and we'll be able to give you a distance measurement. And you can even have it where it adds 10 or 15% to the ends of those as well, give a little bit of extra. But that's all part of it. And just like we did before, it's all drag and drop. So, if I want to put this onto a floor plan, I'm now going to get a floor plan icon that comes out with that. And then we also have the wire and the wire details too that come out with this as well. So there's the wire number. We can see on the other end it's going back to our rack one as our head end. So you get the idea. I know we can't get too deep on this. I mean, today in the webinar, I could easily spend a couple hours just on the drawing side of things, but it does a lot of stuff. But the big deal is it's tracking what you do, it's providing all the shapes and symbols for you. It's automatically numbering all the equipment and the labels for you. So that's just hours and hours of time that's saved right there. Now I'm going to show you a few reports here. You may be curious to see what does this documentation look like for pricing that needs to go to somebody? What's that proposal or quote look like? Let me show you real quick. So let's go up here to reports. And I'm going to go run a couple of quick reports here. We'll just do this one by location. Okay, just making sure I'm not charging tax, which we're not. So ignore that screen there. So this is going to take what we've built here, and on the cover sheet here, we can actually change this image to be what we want. That could be your school logo. That could be a picture of the building or building that's going to be built. That could be on the front page there if you want to. We're seeing a breakdown here, room by room. Now, with this, you can actually include pictures or images in here if you want to. This can sometimes be helpful if you're dealing with somebody that's not very technical. If they're asking you, okay, well, why is this item $4,000 or $5,000? Gives them a little bit of a reference there with the picture. Now you can also show or hide details. I've got model numbers turned off on mine right now, so you can turn those on or off if you want to. You can also show or hide line item pricing. Just depends on if you want to show that detail or not. But everything can be organized by room, or it can be organized by system type, like audio, video, control, networking. We can break it down by system if you want to. And then, of course, at the bottom, we're going to show the summary of everything. Now, this one, I'm showing a lot of detail on the labor. That's probably something you may not care to do. That's something you can turn on and off. Last meeting I had, somebody wanted to see how you do that, so I turned that on. But there's our numbers. And there's a lot of flexibility too. You can build in the scope of work can be in here, the drawing samples can be in here. So it's really flexible as far as what level of information that you show there. And up under the reports area, under installation, we have, as I mentioned, wire pull sheets or wire schedules. We have all your wire labels, equipment labels, keeping track of all the connectors that need to be used in the job. All of that's there in one spot. So it's all built in. So, and then any of that stuff that we built, we can come up here to the portal. We can share those documents with contacts that we need to share it with, and then they can view that online, accept it, and make requests, make comments on it. Makes it fully interactive. So I'm going to go ahead and take what we've built here. So I know we've got just got about 5 or 10 more minutes left here in the webinar. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of show you a few other kind of post-approval things that you may be interesting to you. So we won't be able to get through everything here today, just with the time constraints. But if you're liking what you see and you do want to dive into this further, or maybe even bring in other people on the team to take a look at it, let us know. We're happy to do. We do one-on-one webinars or demonstrations all the time. So just let us know. We'll be happy to set that up for you and your team if you like. So a couple things I'll highlight on POs. You may have your own internal purchasing system, which is completely fine. We do have the ability to bulk create all your POs and organize those by vendor for you. Even if you're not ordering out of our system, we can create a purchase order request report that's already built into the platform that you can then send off to somebody, that then goes in and plugs it into the PO system. So we can either, do the report. We can also export it to a spreadsheet. So you got a few different ways of doing that. Now, we won't get into change orders today, but just to tell you a little bit about that, once this project gets approved in here, any additions or subtractions that we do on this project is automatically going to get logged. So there's no issues of somebody going in and making a change and forgetting to tell somebody or forgetting to document it. The platform is going to do that for you. So you'll have a full history. You'll know who added what, why we removed it, why we added it, what's pending to be added or removed. All that gets flagged and tracked and managed here as a part of our change order process. I will show you just kind of how a Gantt chart is set up. So if you wanted to take a quick look and see how a project schedule might get set up in here, I'll show you how easy that is. What we would do here is just go up to my Gantt view, and then we'll go ahead and maximize this. And you can go in to add in items from your project. So I'll go in. Now, when you create a Gantt chart or project schedule, you can break it down up to 3 levels. So you can do it by installation phase, which is important if you've got a project that's going to be like a longer term project, maybe 3, 6 or more months. You can go in here and then do a phase breakdown. If it's something a little more simple, you can just do it by location if you want to. But let me show you what this looks like. So this will show me my different phases here that have time on them. And then I've got locations here as well. I'll add those in there, and then we'll hit finish. So this actually creates a project schedule. And this is definitely overkill for the little project that we just built, but just to show you or demonstrate how it works, it's actually broken down all the different budgetary times here for us. So I can actually see, what each phase of the job looks like, as well as how much time we should plan for each phase of this. And these are all basically buckets of time that we can now take, and we can now lay these out and put these on the schedule here where we want them to go. And at some point, we can also start assigning this to specific team members on staff or to subcontractors, and that will send out a task to that technician or that person out on site, and they can actually run through that list, check off the items, view the drawings, document field changes, all that stuff's coming right back to the system. So you can do it all here very quickly in the platform. Now you can also incorporate checklists in here as well. Checklists, you can have different templated checklists. So if it's a new construction project and you've got typical things that you need to do alongside of that, then you can also put those on your schedule as well. So do we need to get a permit, or do we need to get an inspection, or do we need to have a structural engineer come in? You can set all that stuff in and start laying this stuff out on the plan where you want it to go. And once again, start assigning it to people here on the team. So I think that's really probably the last major thing we'll touch on today. Like I said, there's a lot the system does, so it's really hard to cover it in about an hour in detail. But like I said, happy to do a deeper dive with you and schedule some one-on-one sessions if you like. So what I'll do now, since we've got about 5 to 8 minutes left in the webinar, I'm going to just give us some time here to do a little bit of Q&A. So if there's any questions that you have, feel free to post those in the questions window on the right-hand side. We did keep the webinar muted. I mentioned this early on just to cut down on background noise. So I think I can unmute everybody, but I'm not sure in the webinar. I think it's maybe a setting I have to decide up front, but there is a questions window on the right-hand side. So feel free to type in there and post that real quick if you have any questions. If you don't have any questions, really do appreciate you stopping by for the webinar today. As I mentioned earlier, if there's any schools that you would like to chat with that are currently using the platform, let us know. We'll be happy to get you connected with them. That's one nice thing about the education side of things, is it's really not competitive. Everybody's for the most part, very, welcoming and happy to help other schools that are doing the same thing. So we can, like I said, get you connected with those. But yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to post those. Otherwise, like I said, thanks for the stopping by. We did record this, so I will make sure that everybody that registered for this will also get a link to the video so you can check it out. Okay, I see a couple of questions popping in, so let me answer some of those here. So one of the questions on pricing. Pricing will vary a bit depending on a few different things. I mean, one of those is going to be the number of users. Also, how you want to manage the system. Do you want to do it in house? Do you want it to be cloud based? So probably best just to have a quick conversation with you on like how you would use it, how many users are involved, and we can give you an idea of the budgetary numbers for that. But we do have special pricing for the education side of things, so just let us know. We can, like I said, talk to you about pricing, get you a quote if you need it for that. Another question is about training. How long does it take to get up to speed with the platform? Yeah, very good question. I didn't touch on that earlier. I meant to. We do have a dedicated team for training and implementation, and that's part of anybody that's new to the platform. We actually take you through a full training and implementation outline that we have. So we're working with you personally. You actually have two people on our end that are assigned to you to help you get get up to speed, make sure you get your database set up, make sure everybody understands how to use the system properly, and just get everything dialed in. So that process can take anywhere from I would say probably 6 to 8 weeks is the typical ramp up time. So just keep that in mind. I mean, it doesn't take you that long to actually be able to start using the platform. I mean, I get people all the time that load it up and start building stuff right, day one, but it's going to, take about 6 weeks to get it really all dialed in the way that it should be for everybody. But yeah, but yeah, that's something that we do. And like I said, we have different training implementation packages too, depending on your needs on that. Let's see here, going through some questions, see if there's anything I haven't answered. Yep. Now the other question is this cloud-based or is this a software? It is actually, it's a software platform that does get loaded up on laptops and desktops, mainly because we do integrate with Visio and AutoCAD and stuff for drawings. Now, as far as the hub or the server part of the system, that can be cloud-based. That's actually the most common way of doing it these days. So we can actually host that for you and manage all your updates and backups. But if you want to manage it on a server on campus, you can certainly do that too. So we do offer it both ways. So you have those options. Okay, looks like I've answered all the questions. Okay, so do last call on those. Okay, don't see any more popping in. All right, well, perfect. Well, thanks everybody. Once again, appreciate your time. Hopefully this was helpful, and we'll be following up with everybody as well too. Just make sure you have everything that you need, and of course, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need anything else. All right, thanks a lot. All right, everybody, have a good day. Take care.